I still remember the sound my suitcase made when it tipped over in my son's driveway. One broken was scraping against the concrete, while my grandson's basketball rolled past it like none of this mattered. That sound stayed with me longer than my son's words did. Dad, maybe a hotel would be better for everyone right now. Everyone. Funny how quickly family turns you into everyone the second you become inconvenient. My name is Walter Bennett. I'm 64 years old, and 3 weeks before that moment, I own one of the biggest custom furniture businesses in western Pennsylvania, Bennett & Sons Fine Woodwork. 40 years of sweat, splinters, 14-hour days, and missing birthdays because I was building a future for my family. Then one lawsuit, one supply chain collapse, and one bank panic later, it was all gone. The factory, the showroom, the trucks, my house. Even the watch my wife bought me before she died ended up in a pawn shop beside Interstate 79. But losing the business didn't destroy me. Losing my son did. I had driven 4 hours to reach his place that evening. My old Ford pickup, rattling the whole way like it was one pothole away from death. Every mile, I kept telling myself the same thing. He's your son. Blood takes care of blood. I believe that. God help me, I really did. The suburbs look different now than when Jason was a kid. Bigger houses, cleaner sidewalks. Everyone's grass trimmed like they were competing for a magazine cover. His house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac with white brick walls and giant windows, glowing warm against the cold October rain. The kind of house I used to dream about giving him when I worked double shifts, sanding walnut tables until my hands bled. I parked at the curb and just sat there for a minute staring at the lights inside. I could see shadows moving through the kitchen. Jason laughing. His wife Melissa pouring wine. A normal evening. My stomach tightened, because I suddenly realized I was about to walk into their life, carrying all my failure in one suitcase. I almost drove away right then. But pride doesn't keep you warm at night. So I grabbed my bag and walked to the front door. Jason answered wearing a quarter-zip sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill used to. For half a second, his face lit up. Dad. Then he saw the suitcase behind me, and everything changed. His smile vanished so fast it hurt worse than if he'd never smiled at all. You made good time, he said quietly. Traffic wasn't bad. Can I come in? He hesitated, just for a second. But when it's your own child, 1 second is enough to break your heart. Melissa appeared behind him before he answered. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect little frown already waiting on her face. Walter, she said carefully, like she was greeting a salesman she didn't trust. Hi, Melissa. Her eyes dropped immediately to the suitcase. Oh, that one word carried more disappointment than an entire speech could have. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. Dad, we should probably talk outside for a minute. Outside, in the rain, I felt something cold settle into my chest. But I nodded anyway because humiliation teaches you obedience faster than anything else in life. We stepped onto the porch while Melissa stayed inside, pretending not to listen. Rainwater dripped from the roof beside us in slow, heavy taps. Jason kept his eyes on the driveway instead of me. Melissa's just stressed right now. Okay. Her mother's been staying here on and off. Okay. And Tyler's having trouble sleeping lately. Tyler was my grandson, 8 years old, loved dinosaurs and blueberry pancakes. I used to build wooden toys for him in my garage before the bank took it. I'm not asking for much, I said softly. Just a few nights till I figure something out. Jason exhaled hard like I'd asked him to carry a refrigerator upstairs alone. Dad, Melissa isn't comfortable having somebody else in the house right now. Somebody else. Not her father-in-law. Not the man who paid his college tuition by remortgaging his house at 53 years old. Just somebody else. I looked past him through the doorway. The dining room table was set for dinner. 4 plates. 4 wine glasses. Plenty of room. I can sleep on the couch. It's not about the couch. Then what's it about? He finally looked at me then, and I swear the guilt in his eyes almost made this worse. Because guilty people know they're hurting you. They just decide to do it anyway. Things are complicated right now, he whispered. You wouldn't understand. I actually laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because after 40 years of surviving recessions, debt collectors, payroll disasters, and my wife dying slowly from ovarian cancer, hearing my son tell me I wouldn't understand problems felt almost surreal. Melissa opened the door halfway. Jason, dinner's getting cold. She didn't even look at me when she said it, like if she avoided eye contact long enough, maybe I'd stop existing. Jason lowered his voice. There's a motel offer out 8. It's decent. I don't have motel money. Silence. Thick, ugly silence. Then he reached into his wallet and handed me $200, like a charity case, like a stranger on the side of the road. I stared at the bills in his hand and suddenly remembered a night 32 years earlier when little Jason had a fever of 104. I'd stayed awake all night, holding cold towels against his forehead, because we couldn't afford the emergency room. I remembered carrying him asleep in the car after Little League games, remembered teaching him how to drive, remembered standing in the rain outside his college dorm after dropping him off and crying where nobody could see me because I was proud of the man he'd become. Somewhere along the way, that boy disappeared, and this man standing in front of me wearing a Rolex and apologizing for his wife, he was all that remained. "Keep it," I said. "Dad, keep it." Melissa called again from inside. "Jason," sharper this time. He glanced back toward the warmth inside that house. And in that exact moment, I realized which life he was choosing. It wasn't me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door. Softly, gently, like kindness still mattered while abandoning your father. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, staring at my own reflection in the glass. Rain dripping from my jacket. Old suitcase beside me. A man erased from his own family. Then the porch light shut off. They actually turned the porch light off on me. I walked back to my truck in complete darkness. That night, I parked behind a grocery store 20 miles away and tried to sleep sitting upright because the passenger seat wouldn't recline anymore. Around midnight, the temperature dropped hard. My knees ached, my back cramped, and somewhere around 2 in the morning, I finally admitted something to myself I'd been refusing to believe since the business collapsed. I was alone, completely alone. Then at 6:13 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Walter Bennett?" The voice was polished, calm, expensive somehow. "Yeah, my name is Charles Whitmore. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Leonard Ashford. He would like to meet with you immediately regarding his estate." I frowned. "You got the wrong guy." "No, sir. Mr. Ashford specifically requested you by name before he signs revisions to his will." My fingers tightened around the phone. Outside my windshield, dawn was breaking over the empty parking lot. "I don't know anybody named Leonard Ashford." There was a brief pause. Then the man said something that made the blood drain from my face completely. "Mr. Ashford believes you saved his life 14 years ago." The moment that man said those words, I stopped breathing for a second. 14 years ago. Save his life. My eyes stayed fixed on the fog windshield while my mind tore backward through decades of memories, searching for a face named Leonard Ashford. Nothing came, just exhaustion, cold, and the ache of sleeping in a truck at 64 years old after your own son shuts the door in your face. "I think you have the wrong person," I said finally, my voice rough in the night air. "No, Mr. Bennett." The man replied calmly. "Mr. Ashford was very specific. He asked for you personally. He insists the meeting happened today." "Who exactly is Leonard Ashford?" Silence for half a beat. Then the answer came. "He's the founder of Ashford Biotech." Even half broken, half frozen, in a grocery store parking lot. I knew that name. Everybody did. Ashford Biotech wasn't just rich. It was old money rich. Pharmaceutical money. The kind of wealth that built hospitals and had university buildings named after it. My stomach tightened. Why would somebody like that want to see me? I believe Mr. Ashford would prefer explaining that himself. And where is this supposed to happen? Ashford Estate. 7 Willow Crest Drive. 10 o'clock sharp, if possible. I looked at the cracked dashboard clock in my truck. 6:19 a.m. What's this really about? I asked quietly. "I'm afraid I can't discuss private matters over the phone." His voice softened slightly then. "But I can tell you this, Mr. Bennett. My employer is dying, and he spent 14 years trying to find you." The line went quiet after that. He gave me directions, told me to ask for him at the front gate, then hung up before I could ask anything else. I sat there staring at my phone for a long time. Outside, people were starting their mornings. Shopping carts rattled across pavement. Delivery trucks backed into loading bays. Somewhere nearby, somebody laughed. Normal life moving forward while mine had completely fallen apart. Then I looked down at myself. Wrinkled flannel shirt, old jeans, boots with a split sole. I smelled like cold coffee and failure. And somehow, in less than 4 hours, I was supposed to walk into a billionaire's mansion. I almost didn't go. Pride again. Pride is a funny way of surviving even after everything else dies. But then my stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since the stale gas station sandwich the day before. So I drove to a truck stop bathroom, shaved using cheap disposable razors, washed my face in freezing water, and tried to flatten my gray hair with wet paper towels. The man in the mirror looked tired beyond repair. Deep lines under the eyes, shoulders heavier than they used to be. A man who'd spent his entire life carrying everybody else and finally collapsed under the weight. By 9:30, I was driving through the wealthiest part of the county. Massive estates hidden behind iron gates and towering trees. The kind of neighborhoods where even the silence sounded expensive. Then I saw it, Ashford Estate. The gates alone looked like something from a movie. Black iron nearly 12 feet high, with gold detailing twisted through the bars. Security cameras tracked my truck before I even stopped. I rolled down the window at the intercom. Walter Bennett. I muttered awkwardly. I was told to come. There was a short pause, then the gate opened immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Just smooth, silent movement, like they'd been waiting for me. The driveway curved through acres of perfectly maintained land. Stone fountains, sculpted hedges, trees older than my entire family line. And sitting at the top of the hill was the biggest private home I'd ever seen in my life. Not flashy, not gaudy. Worse, quiet wealth. The kind that doesn't need to impress anybody because it already owns everything. I parked beside a row of luxury cars worth more than my old business had earned some years. My rusty Ford looked like a wounded animal among thoroughbreds. Before I could even open the truck door, a tall man in a charcoal suit stepped outside the mansion. Silver hair, straight posture, polished enough to look carved from stone. "Mr. Bennett," he said politely, "I'm Charles Whitmore. Thank you for coming." He shook my hand firmly, though I noticed his eyes flick briefly to my truck, probably wondering how a man like me fit into this world. Truth was, I wanted the same thing. "This way, please." The inside of the estate didn't feel like a house. It felt like history. Marble floors, massive chandeliers, paintings older than America hanging on the walls. Everything smelled faintly of cedar wood and expensive leather. I kept thinking about the foreclosure notice still folded inside my glove compartment while walking through hallways wider than my first apartment. Charles led me toward the back of the mansion where the atmosphere changed. The luxury faded into quiet seriousness. Nurses moved silently through the halls. Medical equipment hummed softly behind closed doors. The smell of medicine replaced the smell of polished wood. Mr. Ashford's health declined rapidly these past few months, Charles explained carefully, but his mind remains remarkably sharp. He stopped outside a pair of dark wooden doors and looked at me differently for the first time, less formal, almost curious. "You truly don't remember him, do you? Should I?" Charles studied me for a moment, then opened the doors without answering. The room beyond was enormous but dimly lit. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake behind the estate, though the curtains were partially drawn against a gray October sky. Medical monitors blinked quietly near the bed positioned beside a fireplace. And sitting upright against a mountain of pillows was the thinnest man I'd ever seen. Leonard Ashford looked like death, wearing a silk robe. His skin was pale and almost transparent. His hands trembled slightly against the blanket, covering his legs. But his eyes were alive, sharp, intelligent, locked onto me the second I entered. "Walter Bennett," he said softly. "You got old." I frowned slightly. I guess we both did. And suddenly he laughed. Weak, breathless laughter, but real. "Yes," he whispered. "I suppose we did." Charles quietly left the room behind me. For a moment, it was just the two of us staring at each other while rain tapped against the windows. Then Leonard motioned weakly toward the chair near his bed. "Sit down, please." I sat carefully, feeling completely out of place in my worn clothes and battered boots. Leonard kept studying my face like he was searching through time itself. 14 years, he murmured. "And somehow you still have the same eyes." "I'm sorry," I admitted. "I truly don't remember you." His smile faded gently. "That doesn't surprise me. You were unconscious for part of it." My chest tightened. "Part of what?" Leonard leaned back slowly against the pillows. December 17th. Snowstorm. Interstate 80 near Blackwater Bridge. The words hit me like a hammer. Suddenly I was there again. Snow whipping across black ice. Headlights spinning sideways. Screaming brakes. A bridge railing collapsing into darkness below. My hands gripped the chair arms hard enough to hurt. "The SUV?" I whispered. Leonard nodded once. "My SUV." And just like that, the memory came flooding back, so violently it made my stomach turn. 14 years earlier, I'd been driving home from a furniture expo in Ohio during one of the worst snowstorms that winter. Traffic had slowed to nearly nothing crossing Blackwater Bridge because the roads were solid ice. Then an SUV lost control ahead of me. I still remember the sound. Metal smashing through guardrails. The vehicle flipping over the edge into the frozen river below. Everybody stopped. Hazard lights flashing in the snow. But nobody moved. Nobody climbed out into that storm. Nobody except me. You went after it, Leonard said quietly. Even when the bridge patrol told you the ice might break beneath you. I remembered crawling down the embankment with freezing water soaking through my clothes. Remembered smashing the SUV window with a tire iron because the doors were jammed shut. And then I remembered pulling a bleeding man through shattered glass while the river current pushed chunks of ice against my legs hard enough to bruise bone. Your daughter was there too, I said suddenly. Leonard's eyes widened slightly. You remember Emily? Little girl, about 10 maybe. 9. I swallowed hard. She was crying for her father. Leonard looked away toward the windows. His voice cracked when he spoke again. She still talks about you. The room went silent, except for the medical monitors. Then Leonard slowly reached toward the bedside table where a thick cream-colored folder rested beside a glass of untouched water. Walter, I spent 14 years trying to find the man who saved my life and my daughter's life. His fingers rested on the folder. And now that I finally have, I'm running out of time. He pushed the folder toward me slowly. Open it. I stared at him uneasily. What is this? Leonard's eyes locked onto mine with frightening seriousness. Everything. My hands actually shook when I picked up the folder. Thick cream paper. Heavy. Expensive. The kind lawyers use when the documents inside can change lives. For one strange second, I was back outside my son's front door holding my old suitcase while rain slid down my neck and humiliation burned through my chest. Funny how fast life can turn. One night you're sleeping in a freezing truck behind a grocery store, wondering if anybody on earth still cares whether you exist. The next morning, a dying billionaire is sliding a folder across the room telling you it contains everything. I open it slowly. The first page carried the logo for Ashford Holdings and the signature of one of the biggest law firms in New York. Beneath that was a number so large my brain genuinely struggled to process it. $28 million. I blinked hard, then read it again. 28 million. My throat tightened instantly. There has to be some mistake. Leonard Ashford gave a weak smile. No mistake. I looked up sharply. I can't take this. You already did, he replied quietly. 14 years ago. I stared at him in disbelief while rain rattled softly against the windows behind us. Mr. Ashford, Leonard. Leonard, I pulled you out of a river. I didn't save a country. You saved my daughter. His voice cracked slightly then. Do you know what Emily told me years later, after she finally understood what happened? I stayed silent. Leonard's tired eyes drifted toward the fireplace. She said the reason she never became afraid of people after that night was because of you. Because when everybody else stood safely on that bridge watching us drown, one man climbed down. Something tightened painfully inside my chest. Anybody decent would have done it. Leonard laughed softly, bitterly. That's the lie poor men tell themselves to stay good. He shook his head slowly. No, Walter. Most people protect themselves first. You didn't. He pointed weakly toward the folder again. After the accident, I hired investigators to find you, but the hospital records were wrong. Your name was misspelled. By the time we corrected it, you'd moved after your wife got sick. My stomach dropped slightly hearing her mentioned. You knew about Diane? Leonard nodded once. I know more about you than you probably realize. He looked genuinely sad then. I know you sold your father's land to pay for her treatments. I know you refinanced your business twice to put your son through college. I know your employees stayed loyal to you for decades because you paid them before yourself every winter when work slowed down. He paused. And I know your son turned you away 2 nights ago. That one hit like a knife. I looked down immediately. Shame still burns even when you've done nothing wrong. How? I whispered. Charles keeps track of things once someone enters his house. Leonard answered gently. Especially someone important to me. Important. God. I hadn't heard that word directed at me in a very long time. Leonard coughed hard suddenly, reaching for a cloth near the bed. Dark spots of blood stained the white fabric. My chest tightened. This man was dying fast. He noticed my expression and smiled faintly. Pancreatic cancer. he said calmly. The universe has a sense of irony. I knew that disease, knew exactly what it did to people. I'd watched it hollow my wife out piece by piece until only pain remained. Leonard caught something in my eyes then and nodded slowly. Yes, the same thing. Silence settled heavily between us. Two old men connected by tragedy neither of us deserved. Finally, I pushed the folder back toward him. I still can't accept this. Leonard didn't even look down at it, then accept the truth instead. What truth? His eyes sharpened. Good men almost never receive back what they give the world. I frowned. What? People like you spend their entire lives sacrificing for others. Family, employees, friends. You give and give until there's almost nothing left. His voice weakened, but never lost intensity. And most of the time the world simply takes it. I thought about Jason then. About the porch light shutting off behind me. About $200 extended like pity. Leonard continued softly. But once in a very great while life allows a debt to be repaid. My throat burned suddenly. I looked away toward the rain outside, because old men don't like crying in front of strangers, even dying strangers. Why now? I asked quietly. Leonard smiled sadly. Because I don't have time left to wait anymore. Then he reached toward another photograph sitting beside the bed and handed it to me. A young woman stood smiling beside two small children near a lake house. Beautiful dark hair. Familiar eyes. Emily? She's 33 now. Pride filled his tired voice instantly. Runs the Ashford Foundation. Smarter than I ever was. I handed the picture back carefully. She remembers me? Leonard actually laughed again. Walter, she's the reason you're here. My eyebrows lifted slightly. What do you mean? Emily never forgot your face. After she took over parts of the company, she reopened the search herself. Said she owed her life to a man whose name she never even properly learned. He smiled faintly. She was furious when she found out you'd lost everything. Before I could answer, the doors opened quietly behind me. I turned, and for a second, time folded in on itself. Same dark eyes, same expression, same face from that terrified little girl trapped inside a sinking SUV 14 years earlier. Only now she was a grown woman standing in a navy coat with rain, still clinging to her sleeves. Emily Ashford stopped near the doorway, staring at me like she couldn't quite believe I was real either. Then, without saying a word, she crossed the room quickly and hugged me. Tight, honest, grateful. I froze from shock at first. Then slowly, awkwardly, I hugged her back. You came, she whispered. Emotion caught in her throat. Of course I came. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet. I've been trying to find you for years. I'm sorry I disappeared. She shook her head immediately. You don't apologize to me. Ever. Leonard watched us quietly from the bed with tears in his own eyes. There, he whispered weakly. Now I can finally die knowing I've fixed at least one unfinished thing in this world. Don't say that. Emily snapped instantly, emotion cracking through her voice. Leonard only smiled at her sadly. Sweetheart, I'm 91 years old and full of cancer. We both know how the story ends. The room went painfully quiet. Then Leonard looked back at me one final time. There's one more thing. Charles entered carrying another document case. Leonard nodded toward it weakly. The money isn't the real gift. Charles opened a case and slid several documents toward me. Property deeds, business filings, legal papers. My eyes widened slowly while reading them. Leonard had transferred majority ownership of a brand new custom manufacturing facility outside Pittsburgh into my name. Fully paid, fully operational. I don't understand. Leonard's tired smile returned. Your company was stolen by bad luck, so I bought you another one. I genuinely couldn't speak. 40 years of craftsmanship, gone overnight, and now somehow sitting before me again like life itself had reversed course. Why? I whispered brokenly. Leonard's answer came instantly. Because builders shouldn't die with empty hands. 3 weeks later, Leonard Ashford passed away peacefully in his sleep, with Emily beside him. The funeral made national news. Billionaires always do. But I stayed near the back away from cameras and speeches, because somehow grief feels quieter when it's real. Afterward, Emily found me standing alone near the cemetery gates. He thought of you like family, she said softly. I stared out at the rain-covered hills for a long moment before answering. He treated me better in 3 weeks than some people manage in a lifetime. She knew exactly who I meant. A month later, I reopened Bennett Custom Woodworks in the new facility Leonard gave me. Some of my old workers came back. Gray-haired men with rough hands and tears in their eyes when they saw the shop floor running again. We started small. Honest work. Real craftsmanship. The kind people said was dying in this country. Maybe they were right, but we kept building anyway. Then one snowy evening in December, Jason showed up at the factory unexpectedly. I saw his Mercedes through the office window before he walked inside. Expensive coat, nervous face, smaller somehow than I remembered. He stood awkwardly near my desk while machines hummed in the background. Dad! I kept working for a few seconds before answering. Jason. His eyes moved around the factory slowly. I saw the articles online. I didn't know. There it was. The sentence people use when regret arrives too late. I finally looked up at him. Didn't know what? His voice cracked slightly. That you'd become this. I almost smiled then. Not because it was funny. Because he still didn't understand. Money. Buildings. Headlines. That wasn't what changed me. I became this. I said quietly, the night you closed the door. He looked like I had punched him. Good. Some wounds deserved to echo. Tears filled his eyes suddenly. Dad, I'm sorry. And there it was. The apology I once thought I needed to heal. But standing there inside the factory, Leonard Ashford gave back to me. I realized something strange. The pain was already gone. Not because Jason apologized. Because I finally understood my worth had never depended on whether my son could see it. I walked around the desk slowly and stopped in front of him. I forgive you, I said honestly. His shoulders shook with relief. But then I added quietly, forgiveness doesn't always rebuild what was broken. He cried then, really cried, the kind that bends a grown man in half. And for the first time in years, I saw my little boy again beneath all the weakness and selfishness and fear. I put a hand on his shoulder. Being a man isn't about success, Jason. My voice stayed calm. It's about who you protect when protecting them costs you something. He nodded through tears. I don't know what happens next for him. Redemption is harder than regret. But I know this. Every Friday now, I drive out to the lake house Emily inherited from Leonard. We sit on the dock, drinking coffee while the sun comes up over the water. Sometimes we talk about business. Sometimes about grief. Sometimes about nothing at all. And every once in a while, I catch myself thinking about that freezing night on Blackwater Bridge 14 years ago. One decision. One moment. One stranger choosing not to look away while everybody else did. Funny thing about life. The people who abandon you often think they're witnessing your ending. But sometimes they're only standing at the beginning of your real story.